Hello, my name's Sam. I'm 25, I'm autistic and trans, and I think this is really important to note because it made me feel less alone when I knew that there were words to describe how I interpreted the world, and I was able to start learning how to like myself. If I'm going to be stuck in this bag of meat and electricity for the rest of my life, I'd better learn how to respect it. A bit about my interests. I enjoy studying psychology, reading books, and making art. I like throwing my flesh prison around by dancing, playing footy, and playing ping pong. I think that being a human is gross and weird, but also very, very cool and special. I was diagnosed as autistic at 21, and after having struggled to manage my depression and my anxiety for a long, long time, this was the beginning of a new lease on life for me. The way I think of being autistic is like a processing style. It's like a map of how I might think differently to people who aren't autistic. My senses are wired differently so that some roads don't go where people normally expect. Humor is something that is different in autism. Sometimes jokes just don't land where I expect them to, or people will laugh at me when I think I'm just stating an observation. For me, one thing I really like about my processing style is my visual imagination. It's helped me to see things about the world that I can understand better than words. It also provides a window into my inner world. Watching and listening to my imagination helps me to process complex thoughts and feelings. One of the big first imaginations I had was of time and space zooming past like a series of photographs infinitely stacked on top of each other, branching out like an entire forest growing at super speed. I remember very quickly feeling overwhelmed with these images. They grew so fast that it made me feel nauseous with the scale of it. After that, I thought about it a lot. I used to stand in the mirror and try and stand still, realizing that no matter how hard I tried, I would never be in the exact same position ever again. I learned that everything is constantly moving, but I didn't know how to ask about it. I couldn't find the words. So it was just me and my imagination. I wondered whether other people thought the same as me. I felt confused and anxious because I didn't know what it all meant. I wondered about the meaning of life and about how much humans know and don't know. The older I got, the more I realized how little we all knew and how much exciting information about the universe is out there just waiting to be noticed. As I got older, I still struggled to fit in. My imagination started to take me down some dark paths. I felt like I could never learn about the stuff I wanted to learn about. The older I got, the sadder I felt, but I didn't know how to express it. I just felt like something was off about me, and I felt embarrassed about it. I tried to hide it, and no one seemed to notice that I was having a bad time. So all these bad feelings got stuck in my imagination, and they would circle around and around in my brain all the time. By high school, I was pushing all those feelings away by being noisy and distracting. I often hear about autistic people being really well behaved at school and then coming home and blowing off steam. I think I was the opposite. I didn't want my mum to know I felt bad, so I behaved well at home and I acted out a lot at school. I started getting into lots of trouble and I felt really bad. At this point, I still felt pretty confused. I felt like other people's expectations weren't the same as mine. And why wasn't anyone talking about how strange it was to be human and just pretend that it was totally fine? I felt disappointed because I'd been excited for high school. I thought we'd learn about how the world works, but it just seemed like everyone was ignoring all the questions that I thought about every day. So I tried to ignore them too. The more I avoided paying attention to my thoughts, the louder they became. I started to notice that my brain felt heavy and slow after hanging out with friends. I think I spent so much brain power trying to figure out how to fit in. And for hours afterwards, I would use my imagination to replay conversations over and over to understand what had happened. I would feel exhausted, but then my dark thoughts would creep up on me, telling me that I wasn't good enough or I wasn't trying hard enough or that I was a waste of a human. I started to cry a lot out of nowhere, and I wouldn't understand where it had come from because I'd let all of these feelings build up for too long and I could no longer untangle them. I finally realized that I needed to reach out and seek professional mental health support. In the beginning, it felt really exhausting, but after a while, I started to feel just a little bit lighter. Saying things out loud, I realized how seriously my feelings were impacting me, and I started to get practice describing them, which made it easier to unpack and process them. I have slowly been learning how to express myself authentically, and this has been a really, really valuable skill. Shortly after, I realized that I was autistic. I started to understand how autism is just a different style of thinking, seeing, and experiencing the world. And I realized how that it can be hard to relate to people who don't share the same processing style. I learned that I was valuing being liked more than being authentic, valuing others' expectations over my own. I had forgotten who I was, and I needed to find a way to tune back in. Luckily, my shiny new diagnosis gave me hope and a starting point. I started to connect with other autistic people, especially those who were also diagnosed later in life. And I realized how much we all had in common, similar experiences and feelings and interests. To feel accepted just by being me. Finding the autistic community has been one of the most exciting periods of my life. I can't stress enough how amazing it is when you find your people. Around this time, I also finally felt comfortable coming out as transgender, and I was especially pleased to learn about the overlap between the queer and autistic communities. Since then, although it hasn't been a completely smooth ride, I have learned to appreciate how special we all are. We all have these amazing abilities to move around and to think thoughts and feel feelings. And we can sense the world through our bodies in all these different ways. And we can experience things like music and film and books and hot chips. Something that kept me grounded throughout my life was my art, painting and drawing. That's been a really good way for me to harness my imagination and to find healthy ways of expressing it. Another thing that helped me was reading and watching YouTube videos about science. This has been a really fun way to let my imagination wander and to kind of feed that interest. Today, I feel much more tuned into my mental health. I really practice things like listening to my thoughts and my body, and I practice responding to myself kindly. I give myself breaks. I drink lots of water, listen to music that I love. I do gardening. Even if a part of me doesn't want to start the action, know that I'll enjoy my interests once I'm actually in the headspace of doing them. I have routines in place that I can do in the morning, in the evening. And some days I won't want to do anything. I do have a therapist that I can check in with, and she helps me to unpack things, and I'm really grateful to have her. She taught me that I can love my whole self, that I'm not broken, that I'm on a journey and always growing and learning more about myself and about the world. I will never know myself fully, and we'll never learn everything we can about the universe. But choosing what we want to focus on is all part of the fun of being human. I suppose my final message here is that things do get better and you can find your people. You can realize that you are valuable just by existing, just by being a cool human and by exploring the world in your own way. I think we're all doing something magical.